Moog Audio recently released the new MoogerFooger plugins, and I decided to check them out. I was instantly inspired to create a psychedelic rock song, kind of like The Doors, and I wanted to use at least one of the MoogerFooger plugins on each of the tracks in the song. So how did it turn out? Well, we're going to find out. But first, I want to give a big thank you to Sweetwater for hooking me up with these awesome plugins. And yeah, they do more than just guitars and musical gear. They do software and plugins as well. So be sure to check out Sweetwater for all of your recording and musical needs. So in this bundle, you get 7 plugins that are based on classic MoogerFooger pedals. So let's quickly look at what those plugins are, and then we'll go through the whole song track by track so you can see how I use them on each track. So you have the MF101S, and this is a low pass filter. Then you have the MF102, which is a ring modulator. Then you have the MF103 stage phaser, the MF104 analog delay, and the MF105 MRF. And this is a resonant filter bank with a pattern generator and a skewing envelope. So it's a pretty cool plugin. We're going to get into it in a bit. The MF107 Freak Box, and yes, there is no MF106, just like with the pedals. And then we have the MF108 ClusterFlux, and this is a modulation pedal featuring chorus and flanger types of effects, and it has a pretty cool name to go along with it. You'll see quite a bit of it in this song. And speaking of the song, let's give it a listen so you can hear what's going on there, then we'll go through track by track.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles dropped onto the earth. The animals eat whatever they can.
So it's got this whole psychedelic thing going on, a lot of movement with different things. So we'll start with the first track on here, which is our bass guitar. And let's have a look at what I've got going on there. I have the MF108 ClusterFlux. So I have the bass soloed. Let's start playing it without the effect engaged so you can just hear the raw bass guitar. So you can see I have this in the classic chorus. I just chose a preset in there and this kind of worked out. I might have changed some of the output and drive settings plus the mix to go along with that. But yeah, it's a classic chorus and I've always liked the sound of chorus on bass guitars. So that's our bass guitar track with the MF108 ClusterFlux. Now let's move on to the next track, which is our electric guitar 1. So let's solo that. And you can see on here, I have the 105 MRF and the 108 ClusterFlux. So let's just play it without these engaged. Just kind of a plain guitar. And that's what I wanted to go for because I knew I was going to be adding some cool effects to it. So I didn't want a whole lot going on. So let's start with our MRF engaged. And this is our MRF. And you can see there's 12 different patterns that you can switch between. So let's just switch to some of the other patterns just to hear what they're like. So that's the MRF. Let's go into the next one, which is the ClusterFlux. We'll engage that. So this is just with the ClusterFlux engaged. And now we'll engage both together. A lot more interesting on that guitar. Now let's move on to electric guitar 2. And this one is pretty straightforward. It's just got the ClusterFlux on there with Flanger Danger preset. So let's hear what that's like. We'll start with it off. That is the Flanger Danger in the ClusterFlux. Let's move on to the Easy Drummer 3. So this is my drum plugin, Easy Drummer 3. Normally I would do multi-output, so each drum has its own individual track. I didn't do that with this, so this is kind of like a drum bus right here. And that's how I treated it, was as if it's a drum bus. So on here, I have the 107 Freak Box and the 108 ClusterFlux again. So I'm going to disable the ClusterFlux and we'll look at the Freak Box on its own. And we'll start playing it without anything on there. All right, we'll enable the Freak Box now. So you can hear it just kind of adds a little sizzle on there, something extra. I thought it kind of gave it an old school vibe. Now let's open up the other one here, the ClusterFlux again. And we'll enable that so you can hear it all together. Just a chorus effect on there. Kind of added some interest. You could do with or without that one if you wanted, but I thought for a real psychedelic sound, I would just put some sort of modulation on the drums. Now let's move on to our next track, which is like our organ synthesizer sound that kind of gives it that Doorsy feeling. Now, before I get into this instrument, I just want to say if you're enjoying these plugins and maybe you're looking for some software plugins or maybe some hardware gear for your home studio, be sure to check out Sweetwater. The amount of gear and software that they have in stock is incredible, and they have very competitive prices. Plus, they also offer a very flexible payment plan if you should need that. And if you're curious about what you should actually be buying for your home studio, maybe you have some questions, you can talk with one of their sales engineers and they are going to hook you up and make sure you're going in the right direction. So be sure to check out Sweetwater. Now back into the MoogerFoogers. And on this track, I have the 102 ring modulator and the 104 delay. So let's check out the 102 first. I'm going to disable the 104 for now. And we'll start again with it off. Now, this is a little more subtle, but if you're listening on headphones, you can hear it's really adding some more stereo width to it, and it's kind of doing like this almost ping pong effect there. And you can see I use the stereo widener preset. So it is doing that width thing that I wanted it to do. Now we'll go to the next effect in there, which is the 104 delay. And I have the 102 disabled for now, so we'll listen to this one. All right, let's enable both of them now. It just adds a lot more movement to that organ sound, and I like how it turned out. Sounds pretty cool. It's got that sort of Doors vibe to it. Now we'll move on to lead vocals. And on the actual lead vocal track itself, I don't have the MoogerFooger, but I have it outputted to a lead vocal bus because I have two lead vocal tracks. They're just doubled and they're both feeding into this lead vox bus here. And then on here, you can see I have a bunch of the MoogerFoogers on here. So I have the 105 Murph, the ring modulator, and the analog delay. So let's just solo that and we'll give it a listen.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles drop.
Yes, you can hear it's really psychedelic. It's got some cool sounds to it. So let's just go through one by one. We have the Murph here, which is that filter bank with the pattern generator. And I've got it set to Frozen Zombies preset. So let's hear that.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles drop onto the earth.
Just kind of gave it a little bit of width. And we'll go to the next one here, which is our ring modulator. We'll enable that.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles drop onto the earth.
Adds more interest to the vocal for sure. And then we'll go to the next one, which is our analog delay.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles drop onto the earth.
Just makes the vocal a lot bigger. So I'm going to enable everything again.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air.
Yeah, I really like how it turned out. And you'll notice I have another one here that I did have on. And I like the way it sounds with this on when it's soloed, but when it was in the mix, it kind of just muddied everything up. So I'll show you what that sounds like. This is the 108 ClusterFlux.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles drop onto the earth.
And I'll show you what it sounds like now in the mix.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles drop onto the earth.
So you can hear that main vocal sticks out a lot more with that 108 disabled. So I left it disabled for the actual release of the song. And I did release this song. If you want to hear the whole thing, I've linked to it down in the description. And it's a YouTube link, so you can just stay on YouTube and check it out if you want. So that was lead vox 1 and 2. They're just doubled vocals going into here. And now I have backing vocals 1 and 2. And again, there's no MoogerFoogers on the actual tracks. I have them on the bus here. So let's just solo that. And you can see I have the ClusterFlux on here. Just wanted some chorus because chorus can give it some sort of depth. So it kind of makes it sound like these vocals are in behind the main vocal. So let's just give this a listen.
I climbed a tree to breathe in the air. The pine needles dropped onto the earth. The animals eat whatever they can. Some pack it up for winter again.
So yeah, it just adds some coolness to it. It kind of separates the vocals, so there's some space between those main vocals and these backing vocals. So let's check out some more of this song so you can hear it all together and maybe come up with a psychedelic rock song of your own. Be sure to link to it down in the comments so I can check it out if you do.
And the sun shines bright, destroying the night like days of gold. Falling on my skin like summer days that never seem to end, like a lake without a wave inside. I'm gonna jump on it.
So yeah, that's the song that I actually released, and it's the exact same way that I have it mixed for the release. So I used all of those MoogerFooger plugins in there. And if you want to check out this excellent DAW that I used for all of this mixing and recording. Click the video on the screen. It's Presonus Studio One 6. It is excellent. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. Also, subscribe to the channel for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching. For Audio Tech TV, I'm Zane. Keep creating. Fist bump. Thumbs up.